Regarding the church in 997, Patriarch Reinolt became the new Cathar Patriarch. Meanwhile, throughout the early years of young Gerung's rule, he utilized the revitalized peasant army to continue the conquests of his predecessors. He expressed a particular interest in reclaiming Rome from the Muslim Sultanate of Ptolemy. Some criticized his ambition, or his desire to impress the rest of Christendom, though these objections did not faze him. On the 22nd of January 1001, at the request of the Cathar Patriarch Reinolt, free investiture was done away with, giving the Patriarchate more authority. This drew yet more ire from those same secular authorities which criticized his ambition, pointing out the revolt of Boso under King Ruchun. They claimed that the church, which was beginning to amass enough power to turn on the crown, should not be further bolstered. Gerung, however, called them godless, halfway in jest, and disregarded their commentary. His greatest flaw of character was being far too sure of himself, and it was a habit he was going to have to live up to. On the 2nd of July, 1002, His Holiness the Cathar Patriarch Reinolt called the Second Albigensian Crusade for Lombardia upon the Duchy of Modena and Reggio. Kaiser Gerung took up the call as soon as he heard, marching his peasant army west. On the march west, his army was notably unruly, and in one case raided a village. This was much too much for Kaiser Gerung, and had the commander called before him. He ordered him and his men to give their swords to those they stole from. He then gave these nameless peasants the power of sentencing over the lives of those men who had wronged them. Remarkably, they were spared, and Gerung, in accordance with their mercy, sent the men home, stripped of their titles. Such incidents would not occur again. In the east in 1005, a Jewish Khan by the name of Sot the Zealot founded the Bulgar Khanate, where the Atrakids once stood, the Atrakids having taken the form of Ak Turkestan under Khan Bonek the Mutilator. In 1006, Patriarch Drosuk became the new Cathar Patriarch. In 1007, the Shia sect of Islam said they found their true leader and waged war against the Sultan Ptolemy and the Ptolemy Sultanate, who were Sunni. This war would be devastating and highlight the desperate fractures in the Muslim world. On the 15th of November 1008, the Crusade for Lombardia ended in a Cathar victory, despite the overwhelming Catholic response and the Pope's vast armies. By November, the Jewish Khan's Bogomil's son was defending against 5 revolts, which were threatening the general stability of the realm. On the 19th of November 1008, Kaiser Gerung called for a conclave in Schwarzburg, where Cathar Patriarch Drosuk and Pope Urbanus II would meet and discuss whether a peaceful resolution of their differences were possible. At this historic meeting in Schwarzburg, showing an unprecedented display of tolerance, the Cathars were officially recognized as an offshoot of the Catholic religion, their differences a permanent schism, rather than a heresy which must be suppressed and stamped out. The faithful cried out in celebration on this day. The Cathar Church was officially rebranded the Albigensian Church, the Cathar Patriarch the Albigensian Patriarch, and Cathars as Albigensians. In 1009, Reiner became the new Albigensian Patriarch. On the 16th of April, 1011, the Teutonic Order was founded, and on the 25th of that month, the Knights of Santiago were founded, and finally on the 28th, the Knights of St. John were founded as well. In 1012, Patriarch Adam became the new Albigensian Patriarch. Kaiser Gerung was loved by his people, and he ruled happily, though there were still forces which designed to dispose of him. While returning from the countryside on an errand, Kaiser Gerung the Confessor ate at an inn which he found out too late had a huge manure pit packed beneath it. Kaiser Gerung the Confessor died on the 20th of August 1012 at the age of 24 in a manure explosion. This would seem to have left him without an heir, but the errand he set out to complete was the adoption of an heir, who was left outside on the carriage. Kaiser Engelbreht was left to ascend to the throne at the tender age of 5, going from orphan to king in the matter of a week. On the 23rd of February 1013, the former Albigensian Patriarch known as Reiner was canonized as Saint Reiner the Zealot, among the first of the Albigensian saints. In 1014, Elder Ernest became the next Albigensian Patriarch. Later that year, the Catholic Pope Clemens II declared the Second Crusade upon Pannonia, in order to wrest territory from the Tengri pagans there. By 1016, the crusade was a success, cutting Pannonia in half and subduing several pagan chiefdoms in the process. Their Khan was forced to convert, and the conquered territory was reorganized into the Catholic Kingdom of Bayern, right on the Volksreich's eastern border. The Kral of Bayern, König, granted land to the Teutonic Order in the north of his kingdom, thus posing a threat to the Albigensian Volksreich. Over the course of the next couple of years, more land would be granted to them. In 1019, Elder Bhertolt became the next Albigensian Patriarch. On the 20th of March 1019, Patriarch Bhertolt, in an attempt to win even more power for the Albigensian Church, declared war on Kaiser Engelbreht. This shocked the Volksreich, as the people were deeply religious, but also fiercely loyal to their king. Bhertolt thought that with this move he could convince the child wearing the crown to back down, submitting to the demands of the Church in totality. Meanwhile, in the Holy Land, Ghazi Bethsan, a Sunni Muslim, utilizing the wealth of trade and pilgrimage, founded the Bethsani Empire. In 1021, Engelbrecht contracted pneumonia at the age of 14. Luckily, he survived thanks to the work of his physician. In 1025, Elder Aribo became the new Albigensian Patriarch, ending the foolhardy war of his predecessor. Aribo would make it his life's work to undo the damage done to the Church's image, especially in the eyes of the king. He paid special attention to him and did everything in his power to enamor him with the Church. In 1026, Kaiser Engelbrecht, who had earned the moniker of the Young for when he became a father at 19, sired a son whom he called Vladimon. This was significant due to the fact that a blood heir might indeed rise to the throne for the first time in nearly a century. Vladimon was, however, a feeble boy, and the court physicians were unsure of his survival. Despite this, he made it past his early difficulties and survived. Grateful to God, Kaiser Engelbrecht took to personally helping the sick as an act of charity. He fell ill shortly thereafter, but took the consolamentum as he had planned to anyway, becoming a perfecti. The illness passed, and Engelbrecht continued his good works. This became the talk of priests and elders across the Volksreich who began to mention his name in their sermons as a model of virtue. These stories were helped along by Aribo, who encouraged the image of Engelbrecht as a holy man in line with the Church. In 1028, under the new Kralovna of Bauer, Eufime II, the Teutonic Order's territory was subsumed back into the Kingdom of Bauer. In 1028, the Grand Cathedral of St. Reiner the Zealot began construction in Schwarzburg on the orders of Kaiser Engelbrecht. In May, a well-known priestess by the name of Sister Gisela began to support the claim that Kaiser Engelbrecht the Young should gain sainthood, largely giving her sermons inside and around the frame of, and soon enough the completed, Cathedral of St. Reiner. In the meantime, deep in the heart of West Africa, a reformation took place to give their religion an official structure under a church, a high priest, and with holy scriptures. Back in the Volksreich, in 1030, an Albigensian priestess was canonized as Saint Bella the Wise for her work as a teacher a decade earlier. In 1032, the West Africans formed a holy order by the name of the Spirit Guardians, founded to protect their indigenous faith. By around 1035, some peasants had begun to feel as though Kaiser Engelbrecht the Young was so focused on his spiritual pursuits that he had forgotten where he came from. A series of peasant revolts cropped up against him, seeing his own blood successor, his years of conquest feeding his own domain, and his deep involvement with the new Albigensian Church as proof that he did not truly care about the peasantry, overlooking their plight in order to become more like the other kings of Europe. The Kaiser dismissed their claims outright and fought against their open rebellions, quelling them. In 1038, the Volksreich began their push south into Milano towards Rome, with the goal of taking Rome from the heathens of the Ptolemy Sultanate. Engelbrecht, though not a proud military man like his father, was still obsessed with accomplishing his father's dream of conquering Rome. Engelbrecht felt that this was the only way he could truly know his father, the only way he could make a dead man proud. His plans would be interrupted, however, when the Albigensian Patriarch Aribo called the Third Crusade against Prussia in order to liberate Polska. Prussia was once, long ago, part of the Volksreich, and so Kaiser Engelbrecht the Young dropped everything and went crusading in the name of God. On 20th of January 1040, by the grace of God, the Third Albigensian Crusade was successful, leaving many heathens dead. Kaiser Engelbrecht was truly ablaze with holy fire, and while he could have taken the lands himself, he instead kept his promise to the Patriarch and gave the conquered lands to a trusted warrior. Her name was Gisela Siegfrieding, and she was crowned as Queen Gisela of Polska on the day after the Third Crusade's end. She was a good Albigensian woman, where Engelbrecht's wife had been brought up Catholic. After a dispute, which was a long time coming due to his near-obsessive dedication to the church, he pursued a church-sanctioned divorce in the hopes of marrying Gisela. However, once he proposed, she declined him, because he was a perfecti, and therefore wasn't supposed to have any more children. He saw this as a sign and used his status as an unmarried man to dedicate his time evermore to the Lord, distracting him from his love for Gisela and especially to inspiring the conquest of his enemies. Gisela ended up marrying a Catholic, and seeing this as a mistake of the flesh, Kaiser Engelbrecht plotted to murder him. He was invited to her coronation shortly thereafter and gladly accepted, allowing him to understand the environment in which they lived and plant spies whom he put in contact with a spy master. On the 14th of July, 1040, Bishop Adalbrecht was canonized as an Albigensian saint for his incredible piety, having been spoken to by God himself. On the 21st of August, 1040, the Kingdom of Bayern was subsumed into the Kingdom of Velika Morava under Kralovna Eufime due to succession laws. In 1042, Gisela's Catholic husband fell off a balcony after its railing broke, an unfortunate accident as far as anybody was concerned. By 1044, after many small wars with Velika Morava and Moldova, the Volksreich was gradually gaining more ground in Central Europe and solidifying its borders. Meanwhile, in the north, Novgorod had conquered the mighty Noreger, and with it almost all of Scandinavia, except for the small enclaves of Iceland and Sviariki in Iceland and Sweden. Because they now shared a border with the Volksreich, the court chaplain was sent once again to Novgorod in order to try and convince them to turn to the Albigensian faith, as well as the court chancellor to improve relations with them. He was soon imprisoned and then killed. This was done in Iceland and Sviariki, and again both representatives were killed. By 1046, Sister Gerland, the missionary to Sviariki, was declared a martyr largely because of her particularly violent death. They tied her to the bow of a ship, and after being sailed around the frigid North Sea, was kept alive so the seagulls could pick at her. She survived this torture for a mere 3 days. Later that year, a peasant revolt rose up in La Roche against the Kaiser. They were swiftly put down by the Kaiser, but this nonetheless indicated a shift within the Volksreich from the peasant-oriented band of heretical outcasts which adopted its leaders from the streets, becoming now an empire with a semi-hereditary monarchy, established church, and grand army. This shift was cemented during the ambitious and archetypal reign of Kaiser Engelbrecht the Young, a crusading ruler who expanded the power of the Albigensian Church and reflected more and more the other European monarchs in his style. On the 6th of August, 1047, Queen Gisela of Polska died in combat against Moldovan soldiers, and due to her husband's death years prior, she never had any children, leaving Kaiser Engelbrecht to inherit the Kingdom of Polska as the one who bestowed it upon her in the first place as the result of a crusade. On the 29th of June, 1048, Pope Lucius II called the First Catholic Crusade for Jerusalem. In 1049, very odd news reached Europe. The West African high priest Baji had declared a holy war against the Ptolemy Sultanate. Most wrote this off with confusion, some erroneously believing that these were also Muslims. On the 25th of February, 1050, Patriarch Trunzelmann became the new Albigensian Patriarch. On the 10th of July, 1050, a daughter was born to Tanis Vladimin by the name of Anne. On the 17th of November, 1050, the late Patriarch Aribo was canonized as a saint, known as Saint Aribo the Just, for his righteous leadership of the Albigensian Church. Later that year, word reached the Kaiser that there was an adventurer seeking to carve a kingdom out of the Volksreich, a Removan woman by the name of Danuta, hailing from Prussia. She had made good progress catering to the enemies of the Volkish people, and was said to be leading several large mercenary bands with the promise of coin. On the 26th of February, 1051, Patriarch Brun became the new Albigensian Patriarch. Later that year, a chaplain sent to the pagans in the east by the name of Otto was declared a martyr. Even later that year, the Volksreich took Verona from Venice, connecting the Volkish provinces in Italy to the main kingdom and destroying the trade republic of Venice in the process. In 1052, Kaiser Engelbrecht the Young began to suffer from abdominal pain. This led to him becoming bedridden, sick with the flu. By 1053, after years of trying and failing to raise an army large enough to oppose the Volkish people, Danuta gave up and returned to her home where she would likely live out the rest of her days in obscurity. Soon thereafter, Kaiser Engelbrecht would recover from the flu. On the 10th of September, 1053, another daughter was born to Tanis Vladimin, who was named Sarah. Meanwhile, Kaiser Engelbrecht's campaigns in Italy were coming along well, having de jure claims in the entirety of Milano. By 1056, the Kingdom of Velika Morava was beset on all sides with the likes of Pannonia and Moldova, so the Volksreich took a few provinces of their own under the Duchy of Czechy. By 1057, the Catholic Crusade for Jerusalem was a failure. By 1059, the great peasant army began to thin out to about 8,000 men due to near-constant campaigns in the Italian peninsula, to the point where vassal levies once more had to be used to supplement their numbers. On the 5th of December, Bayern broke away from Velika Morava, dividing the territory in half. By 1060, a route had been finally carved through the various warring Italian states to Rome, occupied by the Muslim Ptolemy Sultanate. A holy war was declared on the 7th of October for the reconquest of Rome. On the 14th of March, 1061, Kaiser Engelbreht died suddenly at the age of 54 due to pious self-deprivation. His son Vladimir, a talented military commander, ascended to the throne at the age of 34, and inherited his father's war.